Welcome back to Messy Christian Mamas. We're glad you joined us this week for
Halloween.
This is Kendra.
This is Kaylee. And this is Ashley.
And Ashley has a very exciting topic for us this week. Ashley, you want to tell us a little bit about it?
I do have a great topic and a rare moment of motivation. I'm going to talk a whole bunch in this podcast. I wanted to do an episode about Satan. And the way this episode came up was we were at a party for Messy Christian Mamas.
Thank you, Shelly.
Yes. I was talking with Shelly. And somehow it came up. I was like, I don't believe in Satan. I was like, the Bible doesn't even talk about Satan. And then I went back and I was like, wait, no, the Bible does talk about Satan. But it just doesn't talk about, the Satan that I think we think of in popular culture.
Yeah.
Which actually leads into my very first question with this. When you guys think about Satan, what do you think of? What imagery comes to mind about Satan?
I don't know. So I would say years ago, it was the classic imagery of a spooky dude that was probably either all red or all black and had a pitchfork and horns and stuff like that. But yeah, I think now, after having been more immersed in my Bible study, I think I have a very different picture of who Satan is. He was a fallen angel, right? He was Lucifer. Fallen angel is the idea in the Bible, at least. And that, yeah, I think that there's a lot of, I think it's a complex subject when we start to look into the idea of who Lucifer is and, talking about all of the other angels Lucifer brought with him. And anyway, so, I don't know that I have a specific mental picture of what Satan looks like other than, Satan maybe had a controlling flair.
Right. Well, that's kind of what I went back to Shelley with. I was like, I guess what I was saying is I don't believe that there's this red-horned guy with a pointy tail that I do believe there's good and evil, and I feel that people have choices to do good and evil. And I think that's what the Bible talks about. And so I really got very interested in the subject. I also love Halloween. I always loved how theatrical it is. I lived in Grant Park for 13 years, and they do a really big Halloween celebration. I just think it's just a really fun holiday. So I did want to hear from you guys, too. Have you ever heard of Halloween described as the devil's birthday?
No.
I have heard that several times from students.
No, that sounds like a Southern Christian church thing.
A little boy in my class
Before trunk or treat.
Halloween is bad. Oh, are you dressing up? I'm going to be a zombie.
No, I never heard of it as that. We briefly mentioned it before, and I was told to save it for the podcast, so I'll bring it up. But my mom being British, we very much didn't have this Halloween tradition until we moved here to the States. In England, it was very much more a spiritual thing. It was All Hallows Eve when the veil is thin, and that's when you go to cemeteries and you can converse with your loved ones who have departed much easier, and there's a chance that they're able to come back to this realm, or you're able to see them and everything like that. And then the next day is All Saints Day. So that was always very much in my head with Halloween and spirituality. And it wasn't until we moved here to the States that we got the very much American dress up candy thing. I don't think a lot of kids today really get the whole evil aspects.
I think it depends on your
of
church.
I think it's how you're raised. But there's so many churches, if you think about it in our area especially, there's so many churches that do trunk or treats on Halloween where you dress up and they have spooky music and all of that stuff. So, and then you have the trunk or treats. Have you seen the Christian trunk or treats? It's Jesus handing out, oh my gosh, they're so funny.
Oh yeah, if you go to Oriental Trading and
yes, oh my gosh,
trash,
they're so funny.
They're little Bible keychains and things like that.
They're so great. So I think it's very much it. With me growing up in the 90s, you did have this big backlash against Halloween with Southern Christian Southern Christian churches. And then now it's
the Satanic Panic.
Yeah, so it's but now I don't think anybody really sees it as like an evil holiday. Like on the whole,
Like
I
a
don't
celebration
think
of
so.
evil.
Yeah,
It seems
it's just like
sometimes it is.
it's like a
perceived that
Hallmark.
way.
To me, it's become like another Hallmark holiday. Like it's like
Mhm.
Valentine's Day. It's like it's one of these things where it's just an excuse to
Right.
dress up and buy candy.
I always tell my kids I like cute Halloween, not scary Halloween.
Oh
Yeah.
my god, I have
Um,
nightmares for like weeks after Halloween. So I don't do gore very well, and just like all the teenage boys that want to.
yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
God, it physically bothers me.
No, I just want to dress up and act. That's what I'm gonna do.
I want to theme. I want to.
Right. So I actually printed out a little bit of the history of Halloween, and this is from history.com, like the History Channel. So you'll bear with me. I'm going to read a little bit about the history of Halloween. All right. So Halloween's origins date back to the ancient Celtic. Is it Celtic or Celtic?
Celtic.
Celtic. Okay. Celtic festival of Samhain. The Celts who lived 2,000 years ago, mostly in the area that is now Ireland, the United Kingdom, and northern France, celebrated their new year on November 1st. This day marked the end of summer and the harvest and the beginning of the dark, cold winter, a time of year that was often associated with human death. Celts believed that on the night before the new year, the boundary between the worlds of the living and the dead became blurred. Veils then. On the night of October 31st, they celebrated Samhain when it was believed that the ghosts and the dead returned to Earth, which also sounds like Dia de los Muertos.
Yes, which is such a fun.
Yeah, and then so we move on to the Roman Empire. By AD 43, Roman Empire had conquered the majority of Celtic territory. In the course of the 400 years that they ruled the Celtic lands, two festivals of Roman origin were combined with a traditional Celtic celebration of Samhain. The first was Feralia, a day in late October when the Romans traditionally commemorated the passing of the dead. The second was a day to honor Pomona, the Roman goddess of fruit and trees. The symbol of Pomona is the apple, and incorporation of this celebration into Samhain probably explains the tradition of bobbing for apples that is practiced today on Halloween. And then moving on to All Saints' Day. So on May 13 AD 609, Pope Boniface IV dedicated the Pantheon in Rome in honor of Christian martyrs, and the Catholic Feast of All Martyrs' Day was established in the Western Church. Pope Gregory III later expanded the festival to include all saints as well as all martyrs, and moved the observance from May 13th to November 1st. By the 9th century, the influence of Christianity had spread into Celtic lands, where it gradually blended with the supplanted older Celtic rites. In AD 1000, the Church made November 2nd All Souls' Day, a day to honor the dead. It's widely believed today that the Church was attempting to replace the Celtic Festival of the Dead with a related church-sanctioned holiday.
Well,
And then
story
All
of the
Souls-
church's life.
Right. And then All Souls' Day became All Saints' Day. And and from All Hallows to All Hallows Eve to Halloween. All right, so one more little bit of history. How did Halloween start in America? So the celebration of Halloween was extremely limited in colonial New England because of rigid Protestant belief systems there. Halloween was much more common in Maryland and the southern colonies. As the beliefs and customs of different European ethnic groups and the American Indians meshed, a distinctly American version of Halloween began to emerge. The first celebration included play parties, which were public events held to celebrate the harvest. Neighbors would share stories of the dead, tell each other's fortunes, dance, and sing.
Interesting.
Yeah. And then colonial Halloween festivities also featured the telling of ghost stories and mischief making of all kinds. By the middle of the 19th century, annual autumn festivities were common, but Halloween was not yet celebrated everywhere in the country. In the second half of the 19th century, America was flooded with new immigrants. These new immigrants, especially the millions of Irish fleeing the Irish potato famine, helped to popularize the celebration of Halloween nationally. So.
Good old Irish.
Yes. Okay, so bringing us to like the Satan though. So I got most of this research from a video from the Bible Project, which was about Satan and spiritual creatures and demons.
Mm-hmm.
And the way they talk about it is that Satan was actually a title And that's why he says the Satan instead of just Satan, because it's not an actual proper name. It's actually a title. So, if you'll bear with me to read just a little bit more, this is a summary of Satan and demons in the Old Testament. And I'll tell a little bit about the New Testament, and I've got some questions for you guys.
Okay.
Okay, so spiritual evil from the Hebrew scriptures. All right, so we encounter multiple spiritual and human rebellions that are all intertwined. So in Genesis 3 through 4, the original spiritual rebellion is a former exalted throne guardian of God's heavenly temple who resents being subservient to exalted humans. So he lures them into the same temptation he succumbed to, seizing authority by his own wisdom and abusing it for selfish purposes. When we then watch humans replay this rebellion, first with Adam and Eve, and then with Cain's murder of his brother. In Genesis 6 and 11, even more members of the divine council rebel, making for an intensification of the Genesis 3 rebellion. This results in the spread of creatures who are part spiritual being, part human, and who spread violence through their empires, beginning with Babylon. As many of these beings die in the flood, their spirits live on in the underworld as terrifying monsters. And a lot of this is a callback to our Random Things in the Bible episode.
Mm-hmm.
There's a whole bunch of
Nephilim?
these. Yes, exactly. Yeah, so the narratives provide 3 categories of spiritual evil. An arch rebel depicted by the imagery of the snake. Lower level spiritual rebels who deceive humans into exalting their empires to divine status. And deceased spirits of the Nephilim who endure a shadowy existence in the underworld.
Dementors.
Yes. So in the Old Testament, there is no mention really of the one adversary, the one supreme evil adversary. But in the New Testament, there is.
Yep.
So in the New Testament...
Well, really, because Job talks about how Satan was challenging God about Job.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, just quite. I'll look that up on my own. Sorry, Ashley.
That's fine. And I'm going to go into like some more detail about these individual evil entities a little bit later on. Okay, so in the New Testament, the Satan is an English translation of a Greek transliteration of a Hebrew word, Hasatan.
This is great. This is you and Kendra's favorite thing is Greek and Hebrew words.
Right.
Take a drink every time.
The biblical Hebrew word refers to an adversary or one who stands against. So it refers to humans who oppose one another. Also, the devil is an English translation of the Greek word diabolos. It describes a person who slanders or speaks to defame another person. So it's church gossips.
Yeah,
That's diabolos.
that part of that video really stood out to me about how that's the word that they used to describe people who were spreading gossip in the church was diabolos, and I was like,
right,
well, that's not great.
Right. So throughout Jesus' mission of announcing the arrival of God's kingdom, he made perfectly clear that this adversary was not human, but rather the spiritual powers of evil who are represented by one particular being referred to by many titles. So the devil, or the Satan, Beelzebub, which means Lord of the house, ruler of demons, and the power of darkness. So they really talk about in this video that these titles and that evil and Satan and all that, it's actually good creatures gone bad, and that it's rebels. It's like the rebellious spirit in humans to go against God's good works for us. All right, so I have some questions for you guys. Okay. So, who are some adversaries, or your favorite adversaries in popular fiction? So I'll get the ball rolling. So mine are Dr. Evil, the King and the Princess Bride,
Oh yeah.
Darth Vader.
Oh,
Well, no.
that was mine.
It would be Prince Humperdinck in The Princess Bride. He's not the
Oh,
king.
you're right.
The
Okay,
king
Prince
is his
Humperdinck.
friend.
But the king
Has
dies halfway through the movie.
No, the king is alive. He has dementia because he kisses.
Oh yeah, it's in the
Girl, this is my
It's in the
favorite
dream.
movie. Don't worry, like we
Right,
like.
right. No, it's in the
I
dream.
can quote the entire movie. So this is Prince Humperdinck and the 6-fingered man.
Yes. But yeah, that's a great story of like good versus evil.
Yeah.
And I have
That's funny.
Voldemort,
Yes. He's a good one.
the clown and It.
Oh,
That's a really scary
Pennywise.
one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
What
That counts.
controversy.
Okay, so some adversaries.
It was like every Disney villain. including
Kylo
my-
Ren.
Oh yeah.
Which is also what was like one of my personality. Because it was my personality type or your personality type was Kylo Ren. It was yours.
Is it mine?
I think it was yours. But you and Ashley, because you guys were the same person. My personal favorite villain ever, Ursula. Who I
Wicked
just think
Witch
is
of the West.
Oh yeah.
a misunderstood squid.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Moriarty.
Oh, that's a really good one.
Yeah.
Wait, what is it? I don't know.
Sherlock Holmes.
Sherlock Holmes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's a good one. Who else?
Squidward.
Hannibal Lecter.
Wait, is it Squidward or Mr. Krabs? Mr.
Mr. Krabs.
Yeah.
Squidward's a reluctant friend.
Okay, so another question.
Roadrunner.
Yes.
No, Coyote.
It'd be
Coyote.
Okay. What are some characteristics of adversaries in popular fiction?
Oh, manipulative.
Yes.
That we perceive them to get in the way of a hero and the hero's journey.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, block. It's the adversary. Like it's the problem that they have to overcome in order to, or outwit in order to, you know,
An
save the
antagonist,
day. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I have greedy, non-empathetic, selfish, ambitious, powerful. They're usually powerful, and also power hungry.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, what do you think are characteristics
We got it.
of the adversary, the Satan, in the Bible?
I think same. You know, manipulative. Gaslights.
Very like selfish, but sometimes like the motivations are confusing. I
Yeah.
would say like
Cunning.
Like why is Satan just so purely evil and just want bad things? Like in the story of Job, for instance, why does Satan want to prove that Job doesn't love God? Like what's the motivation for that? It
Yeah.
doesn't make sense, right?
Yeah.
Just like pure
They're
evil.
They're
Or the snake,
sociopaths.
too. Yeah. Yeah.
Psychotics.
Psychotic.
Psychotic.
Yeah.
Well, to me, like, I feel like Satan, especially
Sociopathy.
like in this day
Yeah.
and age, is so cunning. Like,
Yes.
he's so shrewd
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
is a good
cunning
word.
and really like watches and observes and like figures out a person's
Yes.
weakness and then just hones in on that weakness and chips it away. Like, I don't feel
Yeah.
like in this day and age Satan delivers power blows so much as he just chips and chips and chips. I think it's much easier to then deliver that blow after you've chipped at someone for so long.
Oh, yeah.
So I
Yeah.
look at people who hit rock bottom and who lose their faith, and it's like it's not usually one instance. It's like
Mhm.
just over and over and over again,
Yeah,
just being
absolutely.
knocked down.
I had some characteristics of Satan in the Bible: military power, economic power, sexual pleasure at the expense of treating human beings with respect. I think those are all sort of descriptions in the Bible. Who or what do you think are adversaries for today? So you're kind of talking about that a little bit.
Yeah.
So who and what are adversaries for today? I have racism, economic disparity, greed,
Greed.
Yeah.
selfishness. How, and I
Ignorance.
put power over thoughts through influence. So for an example, like body image issues affected by social media influencers.
Bullies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People spreading
Gaslighting,
misinformation.
gaslighting, toxic friendships. I think
Yeah.
Manipulation.
manipulation is
Yeah.
this two-faced. You know, where you're not sure if that person is really messing with you, and you kind of get sucked into this spiral of realm of like, are they trying to hurt me, or and you just start justifying and you
Ulterior motives.
ulterior
like
motives,
selfish
and it, like
motives.
it can be really hard to distinguish someone's motivation for doing something, and it's
Yeah.
just like I
And
think
intent
it-
matters.
Yeah,
Like it'd be like the same action, but intent from the action really matters.
Absolutely.
and I think this is like, is it malice, or is it their own insecurities that's playing into it? Like, there's so much that goes into it, and then we have this whole moral gray ground that we look at people who may do something negative or evil or bad, but does that necessarily make them an evil person? Are they able to come back for that? Are they able, or do they do something wrong
Trauma
for
made
the
me do
right
it.
yeah, for the right reasons? You know, a man
Yeah.
who kills someone because they were molesting his daughter, like, we can justify those actions. So it gets really tricky to kind of say this is cut and dry, black and white, evil versus good.
Right. Yeah. I had another adversary for today is ignorance and blocks to a good education. I think it really depends on like what zip code you're born into, what kind of school you're going to go to. And that's
Privilege.
Yeah.
Yeah, a privilege plays a huge part in it. I think privilege blinds people.
Oh yeah,
For sure.
absolutely. Yeah. Okay, so here are some more specific descriptions from that Bible Project video about Satan and spiritual creatures. So the seraphim, which talked about a little bit in our random things of the Bible. Seraphim were actually flying snakes, which was a common symbol back
Just
then.
terrifying.
Right.
Can you imagine?
So when we think about cherubim, seraphim, like when you say the word cherubim, like what do you think of?
Cherubs in the little paintings.
Chubby
Right,
angels.
like
Chubby
chubby little
angels.
baby angels, but it's
Yeah.
actually
And
flying
Michelangelo.
snakes.
That's that is not what's on the
That,
Sistine
there's
Chapel.
nothing more Halloween than flying snakes,
right.
right?
Right.
Holy-
Oh my gosh.
I don't know.
But they talk about how that was actually
Creepy.
a really common image back in the Eastern world.
Wow.
Yeah. And there's actually some
What
pictures.
is the
and they're
medical
studying it, there's
symbol
pictures of
called?
them.
Isn't it?
Caduceus.
I thought it started with an S.
That's a
I'm thinking of something completely different then. Ignore that. You can cut that.
So they talk about how the Satan and the demons, they actually don't really stand for anything. They really only stand against creation and good. So they're rebels and they represent the rebelling spirit in humans.
Well, right. Like we were talking about, what's the motivation? Like it's just like evil intent.
Yeah. And so what this led me down the rabbit hole with is power in creation and power in destruction.
Mm-hmm.
So are there times in like your personal life where you've used creation or destruction in your own life?
Yeah.
I had to go through a whole 12-step program because of that.
I think creation's a big one for me, that like I'm a super creative person and like my job is all about creating. So I like creation a lot. However, I can definitely sense there's something in me that I can also be very destructive too, that I can, if I see, especially if I see something that I feel is wrong, that I have the power to destroy it. You know what I mean?
But I think that
Or try
also, I think that can also be like, can be flipped to, I think people can create things for negative and can destroy things for negative as well. Like I destroyed my body and like my mind through actions that I did. But then you can also create, you know, being a liar takes a lot of creativity. To be a good liar, to be a good manipulator,
Right.
takes creativity. And that's that evil motivation behind twisting these lies and these manipulations in order to get you what you want. So I think this like power of creation, power of destruction.
Like pruning, for instance. Like pruning is destruction, but that's for a positive.
It's for a positive. So
For
I think you
gain.
can
Yeah.
go. I think you can go either. I think it once again goes back to your point, Kendra. Is like what's the motivation
Right.
behind of it? Am I creating this for something positive or something evil? Am I destroying this for something positive?
Or thinking
for
about like
something
segregation,
evil?
like people came in and destroyed segregation. That was probably a very powerful feeling, but it was like a destruction in a positive way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And actually, that's good for my next question. Some things need to be destroyed.
Mm-hmm.
So when is it okay to be a rebel?
Yeah.
If the Satan is the adversary, that's like the rebellious spirit in humans, but when is it okay to be a rebel?
But like, look at Jesus. Jesus' entire life was being a rebel, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All the people Jesus invited to his table, what a rebellious act was that in having sex workers and tax collectors and all other sorts of folks that we're not
lepers and
right, or we're not
Mhm.
worthy, at his table. That was a very rebellious act.
done
The
in
things
such
that he
a
would say to
calm way.
the Pharisees, the way that he would tear down the things that they would preach about, very rebellious. So I think rebellion can be destructive, but it can also be brave. And again, I think it comes back to intent.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's really hard to know, I think, with your own judgment, like when is it a good time for you to be rebellious, when is it not?
It is.
Like trying to make that call.
It is. Holy Spirit, activate.
I think there's a personal, like, in order to rebel, in order to sacrifice, there has to be a personal cost. So, Jesus, every time that he was rebelling, there was a personal cost to that. He knew that he was going more and more to the outlier. He was getting more and more put into this context of, this person is dangerous. This person is someone that we need to destroy. This is a person that we need to stop. And every step he made him more into that. And so it was to great personal cost to him. So I think sometimes when it comes to rebellion is that people want to change things, and people can see that something's bad and can see that there's an adversary there, but they're not willing to make that personal cost yet. Like, maybe it's just too much for them to feel like they are overwhelmed. Like, I can't take this on alone, or what's one person's voice going to do? And I think that's when we do have to look at Jesus and his core group of being like, these were 12 men that changed the world. So, it's, and then Paul later, and, you talk about one man
Plus
changing the
women.
entire
Plus the
world.
women.
But yeah, but like when you look at this core thing, I think when you start looking at the ripple effect of one person's actions, and I think that's what people tend to forget about when they think about, like, well, how can I personally take it? I'm one person. Like, how can I stop racism? How can I stop sexism? How can I stop sex trafficking? Like, how can I? Well, everyone has a ripple effect, and so if you start surrounding yourselves with people who have the same rebellious mindset, then you're going
with good intent. Yeah.
Because and then it happens the other way. I mean, you look at the Nazi Party, that that wasn't just that didn't just happen. That was one person that started very much feeding on fear and feeding on prejudice and feeding on that and started putting out propaganda, and it rippled out to cause a Holocaust. So like it can very much, like, ripples, can turn into waves, and you just hope and pray that it's going to be.
I remember seeing a scientific study. I wish I would have saved it, but it showed how, like, behavior actually really does spread, like how a cold spreads. That, like, whatever behavior you're doing, it can spread.
But I was doing a lesson with my kids in my preschool class about helpers recently, and talking about, we talk about, like, first responders as helpers. I was like, so we've got firemen, we've got policemen, but how can you be a helper? What are ways that you can be a helper too? They were like, I'm little. I can't be a fireman. No, you can't.
Well, you also don't want one of them to be like,
no.
You also don't want to put in their head either. Be
You
like,
cannot
if there's a fire,
fight fires.
I'm gonna put this out because Miss Kendra told me that I can.
So now when they're in chapel and one of the kids is acting as acolyte, I'm like, you do that with an adult assistant always.
Okay, so another part in the Bible where we encounter the Satan is when Jesus goes into the wilderness and he's tempted. So instead of being tempted by, like, an actual, like, red-horned guy, the Bible Project talks about how he's actually fighting his own inner temptation to rule people with power, that he could. And he's trying to overcome that temptation. And,
interesting. Yeah.
And he decides to rule over their hearts instead. So thinking about this and, like, how religions, their goal is to rule over people's hearts. So is it evil to rule over people's thoughts through coercion and manipulation to rule their hearts?
Yes, I think that especially as we're in this election cycle right now, it can sometimes feel like that's the only way to get through to people. I worked in content for so long in TV and with movies, and content is so manipulative. Like, that's how you oftentimes, whether it's theater or music, or if you're a speaker, a writer, like whatever your art form is, is it manipulation, right?
Right.
To provoke someone's thoughts to think differently when you've got them in a more passive mode,
Yeah.
just to absorb story.
Yeah, I think anytime you're trying to take someone's free will away from making their own choices and their own decisions and only supporting what the machine wants you to believe and support,
It doesn't
I don't
have to be a
see.
machine. Like, it can be the right thing to believe, but even just the act of trying to
Coerce
trying to
people.
manipulate people.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting anyway to think about as just like a thought experiment.
Yeah.
Like, is art inherently manipulative?
Right. And then with churches, like churches are a business, unfortunately,
Yeah.
and we do need membership. And so I think a lot of times churches do things to coerce people to come and join the church that might not, there's probably like a dual intent there.
Sure.
But, yeah, it's tricky.
It's
I don't know.
tricky. Yeah. It is. Like, it's tough because manipulation bad, right? but I don't know. It's tricky because I guess it's all, well, what if it's what I believe in? Then it's okay to manipulate these people.
Well, I just think as
it's-
parents, we manipulate our kids all the time in order to
Absolutely.
make the correct decision, what we think is a correct decision, or to keep them safe. We have to manipulate situations all the time. But again, it's our intent behind it, is our motivation behind it. So, is that manipulation necessarily wrong? Is that manipulation necessarily evil? Maybe not. Maybe is there a better way to do it? Maybe. But if I'm in a situation where I have to get a solution pretty quickly, then there might have to be a well-crafted lie or a manipulation to go. Exactly. There might have to be kind of if you stop screaming, we can go get ice cream type of situation.
Yeah.
So
So an even harder question, did Jesus ever use these tactics? Was he ever coercive? Or no, did he always give people free will?
I think it was
I
the
think-
100% grace, 100% truth thing.
I don't know that those things are opposites for me, because I feel like you can still have free will and someone can try to manipulate you at the same time. You have free will not to fall into the manipulation.
Mm-hmm.
I think Jesus always
Like, we've
gave a
learned that
choice.
watching news, I feel like, in this day and
Yeah.
age.
I feel like
I feel
Jesus
like-
always gave choice. He was always very honest and was like, if you don't do this, this is what will happen. So you have to face the consequence of what's going to happen. It's like any good parent does. This is the boundary. You choose to cross this boundary. This will be the consequence. Then you've made that choice. You can't sit there and stamp your foot afterwards saying it's not fair. I told you straight up what to expect. And I feel like Jesus came to every single person that he encountered with that intent. It'll be your choice, but I'm gonna tell you what I would do. I'm gonna tell you what the correct choice is. But again, it is your decision. But don't come to me afterwards, crying about it because you didn't make the correct choice.
He told more lessons through stories too,
I was
and let
going
people
to
come up
say,
with their
like,
own
back to
conclusions.
story, right? Like, any parable that Jesus told was a story, and it is manipulative, right? Because it's designed to provoke you to think about something in a different way.
But it's still like the listener's choice
Right.
of how they're going to perceive it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so another part in the Bible where we talk about adversaries is Babylon. So Babylon represents corporate and systemic corruption and evil in the Bible. And in Revelations, it kind of talks about, the Bible Project perceives it this way, that Babylons will keep being rebuilt and destroyed. So what are some examples of Babylons today?
Politics.
Yeah. I have health insurance companies, credit card companies, and banks. Government's redlining for votes and for better schools
Pharmaceutical
for certain
companies.
people. At the sex trade,
Sugar.
sugar.
Big sugar.
Yeah.
Nabisco is quaking in their boots.
Right.
What is it? Mansaro.
All right. Right. Yeah, there's just so many, right?
There's so many. Yeah. Yeah. Corporate greed. Like what was it? Corporate destruction? Is that what it was?
Mhm.
I love the use
Correct.
of the word corporate in the Bible. It cracks me up sometimes how corporate is used in the Bible. Anyway, yeah, I think there's so many.
On social media, just
Oh, yeah.
news, the news,
Porn. Yes.
porn,
Yes.
those
Yeah.
are all things that are set out to
Media
destroy.
period, like advertising.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, especially I'm a sucker for marketing.
Where like
so.
power and money comes first, right? Over like any other. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. I'm trying to
Something else
think,
that
and I'm
come
like,
from
no,
it.
it still comes back to power. No.
right. And then of course Revelations talks a lot about the adversary. I think we should do a whole Revelation episode sometime.
Yeah,
We'll
we
have
should.
it up
Only
for
because you
here.
want Kaylee to read it.
Yes.
Refuse to.
But some people interpret Revelations as things that have already happened, and some things interpret it as things that will happen.
Mhm.
But the imagery of the Satan is kind of a collage of all the symbolism of evil throughout the Bible. That's kind of what happens in Revelations. It's this collage of all those adversaries.
Mhm. Some really scary stuff in there.
There really
Yeah.
is. There really
Y'all are
is.
really selling this to me. I'm really looking forward to it.
You need a Revelation picture book.
You know what? I really don't think I do. Like, I really think I'm okay.
Right.
I think I'm just gonna do a Cliff Notes version, and that'll be it for me.
Right.
And like in one of our episodes that's coming up where we talk with our pastor, sneak peek, that he talks a little bit about some things out of Revelation and beautiful music that we pulled out of
Right.
Revelation. Revelation
That's
song is one of
fascinating.
my favorites actually, where
Yeah.
holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty who was and is to come. That's from Revelation, but it's like all of these different creatures that are saying it at the same time, and the way they're described is really freaky.
Terrifying. Yeah. It really is. All right, and then just one final point from this Bible Project video. They talk about how Jesus wins our hearts by letting evil overcome him in his final moments. So, have you guys ever had to let evil win, trusting that God will make you free?
Let evil win.
I don't think it was necessary to let evil win. I feel like I had to ride the ride. I feel like I had to hit rock bottom in order to be able to come back. Like, I don't think if I hadn't hit rock bottom that I would have fooled myself into thinking that I had a strong foundation, even though it was built on sand and not on rock. Like, so I think I kind of had to let the evil intent, I had to let the destruction happen in order to fully break, in order to fully be healed. Like, because I think if I was only half broken, like, I would have never been. I didn't think there would have been like a phantom limb going on.
I don't think I ever let evil win, knowing that, like doing it intentionally, thinking that it would help me get to a better place.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the only times I've let evil win is when I was in a different place than that,
Mm-hmm.
in a darker place. You know,
Yeah.
I've definitely let evil win for
Mhm.
sure.
I don't think anybody who goes through a valley of depression or a pit of despair, that's kind of, I think it's unfair saying that you let evil win, because, brain chemistry is a real thing, and, things happen and life happens and trauma happens. And I don't think it's necessarily fair to say to those people, well, you've let evil win today.
Mm-hmm.
So, and to shame them for that. I think there's a very fine line you have to walk
Yeah.
when it comes to that.
Maybe instead of saying let evil win, maybe like you have to observe it happening.
Yeah.
You have to observe it happening and just know that
Let it play its
God's gonna
course.
make you free.
Well, to be devil's advocate for a moment,
Yeah.
I would say when I was in the throes of my depression and experienced one of the worst nights of my life, I was really given a choice, and I felt God speaking to me, like saying, you cannot let evil win. in this moment, and I felt like Satan was there telling me, you don't need to continue. Your life is over. Like, no one will miss you. It'll all be okay. Helping rationalize me through why it was the best decision to make in that moment. And oh, the grace of God is such a beautiful thing that really shone bright in that moment and just said, no, this is lies. He's the author of lies.
And I think we have to celebrate when those incidents happen, but when you do come across people or families of people who have succumbed to that darkness,
a generational curse of that,
have decided that they can't take it anymore, and so they end up deciding to end things permanently. I think one of the worst things you can do is to then turn around to that family and be like, well, then they let it win.
Of course not. Yeah.
And they just weren't strong enough
Right.
to fight, because you no pit is the same. Like, and
Right.
where someone is able to, might have their ears open to hear God's voice in that moment, or to see a pinprick of light in that moment, another person might not be able to be open to that. And that's where I feel
That
like that
moment
shattering has to
Make me
happen.
think of like strength or weakness in any way.
No.
It was pure grace in that moment.
Yeah, and I think that's where
conversation.
community is then important, because I think that's when you have to have, when you're in those periods of darkness and you can't hear the whispers and you can't see the pinpricks of light, that's when it's important to have people around you who are willing to sit in the darkness with you and just be like, well, I can see it.
Yeah.
I can hear it. So I know you can't right now, so I'll sit beside you and I'll hold your hand during all of this. But I'm not gonna shame you for sitting here, and I'm not gonna tell you that you need to hurry up and get through this. Everyone has to go on through their own healing journey the way they have to. But I think we live in a world where it's so easy for God's light and God's whispers to be blocked out. And the Satan has done a really good job of casting these tar pits that throw people in, and unfortunately it's happening to a younger and younger
Well, this is kind of leading into
demographic.
my last question about, so Jesus wants us to live a life that is like him and to be self-sacrificing. But what does that mean exactly? And is there a time to self-sacrifice, and is there a time to stand against evil?
Well, I think, like I said before, I think you have to self-sacrifice in order to take a stand. I don't think anyone's going to go through standing up to racism or standing up to a political machine or standing up to a sex trafficker and not come away a little bit dented, come away with a little bit of skin missing and a little bit of bruising. Like, I don't think anyone can face an adversary like that and get away unscathed. So I think there's going to be personal sacrifice.
Yeah, I think the only way that you truly experience growth is self-sacrifice. You know, and so I think it's a really important component of being human.
I guess the tricky part is are you being self-sacrificed? Who are you being self-sacrificing for? Like, is it for God, or is it for money? Is it for a leader that you really want to follow, a human leader? Yeah. I do think that, like, the Christian, that lesson of being self-sacrificing, it can be taken in a way that can be very unhealthy. That, like, I think you do have to have, like, a sense of self, and I think you do have to stand up for yourself, and you have to stand up against evil. You can't always be self-sacrificing, because that gives evil power sometimes, if it's, you know.
I think there's also a difference between self-sacrificing and soul-sacrificing. So if you're self-sacrificing for Jesus and for God and your faith, then you're taking your hits. You know, you're taking your punches, and you're getting battered. If you're sacrificing your soul for power and for, like, you know, God owns our soul. So, like, if we start giving up pieces of that for power and for money and for politics and for this and for that, that's not really a self-sacrifice. We're taking away something that, you know, is ours, but is shared. You know, that's something that God gave us. So we're stealing something in order to give it to something else. And so I don't necessarily think that that's a self-sacrifice. I think that's a soul sacrifice. If you're taking, it's like the Horcrux thing. If you're taking pieces of your soul in order to elevate something else that is negative, that isn't going to give you something back to your soul, then I don't think that's self-sacrifice. I think that's soul sacrifice.
But unlike a Horcrux, on the right before Reformation, I think it's important to remember, right? God will give it back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Right.
Yeah.
exactly. And I think that's the difference. I think if you are giving pieces of your soul and yourself, and you know that you're going to get those back tenfold, then that's a sacrifice that's willing to be made, because you know that you're getting it back. We've been told you're getting it back. We have eternity waiting for us.
Yeah.
We know we're going to get that back. But if we're giving pieces of ourselves to something that we're never going to get a return on, then yeah, that's what's dangerous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I took us down a dark rabbit hole. So I wanted to
But one last thing I did want
Yeah.
to say, I really loved what you were saying, Ashley, about what was that last line that you read? Can you read it again for us?
I don't know if I read it. I think I just said it.
Sorry.
Is there a healthier way of looking at self-sacrifice? Or is that
Yeah. I'm forgetting now.
Oh,
That's
no.
all right. That's all right. Well, Ashley, you were really articulate. Thank you.
okay? But I want to ask you one question. One more.
Okay, you'll listen back to the episode and you'll be like, that's what I was going to say. We'll bring it up next time.
Can you tell me like a happy Halloween memory you have?
Oh my goodness. That's so many.
Why did all these terrible Halloween memories
Oh,
just
no.
flash before my brain?
A dark rabbit
I
hole.
think one of my favorite was the first time we took Charlie trick-or-treating. Because Charlotte is named after Charlotte's Web. It's my favorite book growing up.
Yeah.
So her very first Halloween, she was dressed up as a spider. And I took her to a trunk or treat, and I had like a web on my back, and so I was holding her in the spider's
Oh,
web.
that's cute.
And it was the cutest thing ever. We got so many people like just loved the costume, and she was 11, 10 months, for all of this, and so she was just starting to kind of like really pick up on things, and I think that was the first time I gave her a piece of candy and everything,
Aw.
and that was like Halloween. That time was right when I was starting to come out of the postpartum as well. Like that's when my meds got adjusted, and so I was just starting to come out of this fog as well. So it's really one of the first clear memories I have too of being a mom
Oh.
with my daughter. So yeah, I think that's definitely one of my faves.
That's cool. I feel like there are a lot, but like they're
Yeah.
snapshots somehow.
What was one of your favorite costumes?
One of my favorite costumes. I can't say that one.
I dressed up as a nun once. In 4th grade, I dressed up as a nun. 5th grade, I dressed up as a nun.
Great.
I don't know what I was allowed to do that.
Last year, our whole family did Winnie the Pooh characters,
Nice.
which was kind of fun. So I was Kanga for that, so that was
Nice.
fun. I was a sexy nurse one year, which was kind of fun. That was the first bad memory that came flashing, but I realized it was a bad memory that helped me realize I needed to get out of a relationship.
Okay.
So maybe a good memory, actually.
Right.
Yeah, so many fun costumes over the years. I feel like I had a lot of fun costumes, but I remember when I was a kid, my parents threw a Halloween party at my house, and I remember bobbing for apples, which I don't know that I ever did again after that, but I was really
Goodness.
young, and it was so much fun. We just had lots of games and fun things to do.
Nice.
What was your favorite?
Oh my gosh, I have so many. Okay, so one of my favorite ones, we didn't have costumes as in high school, and it was like trick-or-treating time. We were going to go trick-or-treating around the neighborhood with James, and so I pulled together this like mariachi outfits for all of us, and we got like pots and pans,
gosh.
and we went around and we sang mariachi songs. Like, trick-or-treating. That was fantastic. Another time we dressed up as SpongeBob characters, and that was really fun, like my whole extended family. And one time we did Baby Shark.
Oh my
And
gosh.
the whole family was shark, and then Sophie was a scuba diver, and it said
That's
"Save the
really
Sharks."
cute.
That's hilarious. Oh my gosh.
That's cute.
Yeah.
We went to the mall with Liv when she was dressed up as Doc McStuffins when she was 2, and that was so
Oh
much
my
fun.
gosh.
No, she was
That's
1.
cute.
Actually, that was
I'm
really
not
fun.
allowed to dress up this year. I was told by my daughter.
Oh, that's not cool.
She's dressing up, and my nephews are dressing up, and my sisters are dressing up. I'm not allowed to dress up because I'm taking her and her friends to trick or treating, and I was told that it would be too embarrassing for me
Oh,
to dress
no.
up. So I won't be dressing up. Something highly embarrassing. I haven't figured out what I'm going to dress up as yet, but it's going to be highly embarrassing. Just haven't
Good.
figured it out yet. She's a minion, so I might dress up as like a banana.
Oh, that's a good
Nice.
idea. Liv's
Or
going to be
group.
Wednesday this year,
Group, yeah.
so I don't know what kind of group costume situation we can even
You'd
do.
be a great
Morticia.
Morticia.
Exactly.
That's a good idea.
Nation.
And then Brad could be it. Is that the same one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Isn't it? The long
With
hair.
all the hair.
Yeah.
Yeah, we should
All right,
do
that's all I got.
that. Okay.
All right.
Closing prayer.
Oh, you want to close out? We need a prayer. Go for it, Kendra.
After an episode of depression.
Go for it. Knock us out.
Oh, thank you, Lord, for being here with us this evening. As you always are, Father, where two or more are gathered in your name, we know that you're there. Father, we are so grateful for all the blessings you give us. Even in the face of evil, you can shine through, Father. And we know that all we have to do is seek you, and we find you. And that is such a wonderful gift that you've given to us. Your grace, your mercy. We thank you for reformation that we have to celebrate so that we can remember that grace is always there for us, Lord. Please help us carry that into our week and have a safe and fun Halloween with our families. In your holy name and the holy name of your Son. Amen.
Amen.
Amen.